Thank you to Audible for sponsoring today's video, Everything Great About Kong Skull Island. World War II dogfight sounds, style logos. Anything that reminds me of Megamind is clearly a win. So obviously they looked at younger pictures of John C. Reilly, but just so you know they nailed his nose, this is him as a younger man. Oh, that's brutal. 2 Dutch tilts letting us feel as off-kilter as our new friends. One of my favorite wins, reflections of crucial things in eyes and other surfaces. I feel like Jordan Vogt-Roberts, can I call you Jordan? Seems like Jordan might have a solid understanding of film language and the value of holding back a little while still enchanting his audience. And a quick 3-minute cold open that establishes the island, one of our main characters, and Kong, who I guess is also a main character. The color grading and lighting prepares your brain for the feel of Skull Island, all ending on this brushstroke title card. Keeping with the Kaiju universe, Skull Island opens with dates mixed into the credits and newspaper clippings moving us forward from 1944 to 1973. Also, Henry Jackman is always a win. He created a beautiful, foreboding score here that... Wait, what? Why does it sound so familiar? Have I just watched this movie too many times? Must be. Anyway, pieces of Godzilla 14 score with fewer horns and more uneasy discovery strings. Also, Elfman's Hulk score has a different tempo and is one of my favorite scores anyway. Plus, no woodwinds. Ooh, that slow aspect ratio change. Right before it begins to fade out, 1973 appears center frame in focus so your eyes barely notice the edges of the screen moving out, bringing us to a more modern day anamorphic 240, with the grain slowly dissipating as we round the top of the cab to Bill's face.
There'll never be a more screwed up time in Washington.
You poor, poor unfortunate soul. You can't even imagine the robot wars that are coming to you.
Monarch ranks right up there with the search for alien life.
Yeah, but those guys are nuts.
Excuse me? Talk about a visualization of obsession and loss of purpose. Dude sits there all night just staring at his medals. I feel like White Rabbit is always a win. Did we establish that? Let's check. White Rabbit is ultimately about drug use, but hallucinations and the ever-building crescendo of the song are such great choices for our second fantasy sequence. Who the heck was that? Maybe not, but in a movie with giant apes, gets a win.
Let me list all the ways you're gonna die. Rain, heat, mud, disease-carrying flies and mosquitoes.
He's not wrong.
And we haven't even started on the things that want to eat you alive.
Just more of those than the former.
The Athena docked in Bangkok, Pier 14, 6 o'clock tomorrow night.
So the real surprise is that Jerry here is an immortal being that's been pulling the strings behind Monarch for decades. He later changes his name to Sam and gets a little more involved. Happy Kong shadowing. So I think I see the vaguely apish skull with the 2 eyes facing to the right, but I can't be the only one that sees the huge-headed troll face guy with missing teeth, right? Or is that the actual skull? The image that spawned 1,000 Loki Carol Danvers fanfictions. I'm guessing. A chillin' on the ship montage is the fastest way to get a Sam Jackson anti-hero walk.
Remember, hold on to your butts.
Whoopsie, now you gotta die. You know, it sort of seems like there are way too many helicopters to fit on that boat, but I've heard from a reputable source that the ship is indeed made of helicopters, so it's definitely not a problem.
And remember the story of Icarus, until the sun melted his wings.
Starting to think Jordan has a thing for Icarus. Why else would Marlowe be falling from the sun? The exhilaration of flying through the mountains, over the ocean, seeing it all through some kind of crazy wide-angle lens. Ha! Big bug shadowing. Not only is that brutal and a totally unique surprise, but I love the way this scene is set up. There are story beats that we the audience come to expect after watching thousands of movies. The conflict in this act was the storm. This is our tense moment, even though they got through it. Now we're on the island, choppers are landing, we now get to watch them work and we feel like we can take a breath. The explosions do add an edge of unease, especially this one right before the tree because we're shown fauna being killed over a survey. Then boom! Black Sabbath's perfectly tricky yet perfectly appropriate paranoid cuts out and the real conflict begins. Also, showing us the animals right before the tree endears us to Kong as an anti-hero immediately. He was leaving the humans alone until they started killing his little buddies. Crazy spot for a long take, and it sells this first encounter in a way that cutting back and forth wouldn't. We experience the insanity with the doomed soldiers. And then a match cut to allude to a human-eating Kong. I didn't say subtly lewd, but subtle really isn't a word you want to be used in your Kong movie anyway. Ah, dang, look at that shot. It's like simulated anti-bokeh since Kong is the subject but in the background and out of focus. That doesn't matter. What matters is the connection made between the audience and the soldiers. Seeing any 100-foot tall living thing would make your eyes cross and make everything go blurry. Not to mention his affinity for standing up in front of the sun, creating a heat haze around his fur, giving him the appearance of a mirage. And like, I get that this is mostly for stylization, but it works for the narrative as well. And the shadows being cast across their faces. Also, yup. Why are the choppers flying so close? Just fly up, up, up. But these soldiers immediately went into war mode as ordered by their colonel. You gotta be on a similar plane and within range to shoot him. Plus, dude runs fast.
Run to the side, you idiot!
Ha! Your dumb school will not save you. You will still die. Anti-stormtrooper aim. Come on with this framing in slow motion. Foes reflected in each other's eyes.
Monsters exist.
John Goodman, the determination in his face. It's not many men who could deliver a speech about monsters so convincingly.
Put it down.
Smart people convincing others to stop threatening these beasts is like a theme in this universe. Oh gosh, that's brutal. Why? Why would the Spiders Kong filmmakers? They cut the spider pit scene from 1933 for a reason. Maybe it's time to let it go. I actually think the switch from a multitude of terrible swarming insects and arachnids to just one awful nightmare fuel spider is a fantastic change. Bamboo-looking legs are obviously unique and a believable evolutionary advantage this species would develop for hunting prey in their bamboo forest. It's a different type of horror than the claustrophobia of the earlier versions of this scene. Could have done without the tendrils though.
Take it off, guys. Move out.
Packard is still our bad guy to come, but there is a statement in here about what war does to people, what war demands of soldiers. Other than...
You know, this is not normal, right? Everyone here seems way too calm right now.
which...
You copy?
Packard's soldiers aren't surprised by his unfazed attitude. This is just how he is because he has to be to lead.
Taking an hour day, you good to go.
I'm good to go, sir.
Get him out.
Even before we're told about their communication style, Marlowe gives a nod to say they're all right. This nonchalance of Kong just battling a giant squid, eating a few tentacles, and then dragging him away for later. Another day, another helicopter fight followed by squid fight. Okay, so this is either a Dr. Steve Brule rules for your health segment, or Kaneda had a similar saying on the back of his jacket. Both wins.
Hey, what happened with the war? Did we win?
Which one?
That makes sense.
Yeah, feel that burn. Humanity.
But I call them skull crawlers. Why? Because it sounds neat.
At this point, I realized I'd been writing skinwalkers in my script notes, which I urge you not to Google. Skullcrawler makes more sense as a combination of No-Face, Evangelion's First Angel, and Cubone. A little visual rhyming here with the Skullwalker Skincrawler trying to sneak up on Kong just like the Vietnamese pool loser tried to sneak up on Conrad.
Kong's the last of his kind, but he's still growing.
Smart way of leaving the door open for some growth in the next 47 years so he can be at least in the same ballpark as 300-foot plus Godzilla.
It's called the Gray Fox.
Oh, but of course it is, you Frank Yeager cyborg ninja love and war is no reason to end a friendship, son of a bitch. So she does have Captain Marvel powers. Oh. Hot dang, look at that scale. Probably a good idea to leave the love story in the past.
Yeah, because the cover's a baby bear. Full-grown tiger can eat a baby bear.
Honesty.
The enemy doesn't exist till you're looking for one.
And sometimes, even if you're a jerk, they still just walk away. Feeling bad for a bug again.
I'm gonna stab you by the end of the night.
Really?
Just kidding.
I'm making new friends. I spent way too much time confirming this. But, from what I gather, Indonesia, where Skull Island is roughly placed, at least in 1933, while not the best place to see the Southern Lights or Aurora Australis, you most likely could see them in Who Cares This Is Stunning. It's funny, after the trailers, if someone had asked, who do you think you'll walk away caring about the most? I would not have said John C. Reilly. But again, I'm an idiot. I mean, let's be honest, none of us really want to see a Vietnam-era movie without Credence. It just feels wrong.
Can we fit everybody?
I wouldn't worry about it. Brutal.
We're all gonna die together out here. You're a good group of boys to die with, I'll tell you that much. We're all gonna die together out here.
Gets me every time.
You should have come here.
This place is a real no-no, sir.
Okay, I got Jeremiah Johnson feels when they went into the ship that was hallowed ground, and I chuckled at the question about who won the war because Jeremiah, my son's middle namesake by the way, asks who won about the Mexican-American War. But this clinches it for me, going through the no-no spot rather than around. Though it ends slightly differently for Jeremiah and his family. I know it's scary, But with Nick Fury, Loki, Captain Marvel, and Corman Day all fighting together, what chance do the Skull Whisperers actually have? Oh wait, Corey Hawkins was a Navy op in Iron Man 3, and Shea Wiggum was in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Alright, we're getting off track here. Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch in Godzilla 14. Randa was a man who appreciated a good reflection as well, since he must have seen the Skull Creeper above him in the glass of the Flash. Obviously Loki is going to be automatically good with a blade, but come on, this is the type of speed ramping insanity that's going to get some eye rolls. But if you're here for monsters, that little 12-year-old inside of you is coming to life. Who doesn't want to slice deviled dino sawbirds with a World War II katana in slow motion wearing a gas mask? Saving your two new buddies with Chekhov's lighter.
Try this.
Weapons! Enough to kill it!
Let's talk about this not super significant but well-constructed twist that, again, reveals Mr. Glass as the bad guy. It's not that simple this time, but one of the first interactions we see Packard have is with Chapman.
What are you gonna do when you get back to the world, Chapman?
Oh, I'm already set up with Eastern Airlines. Grace and Billy all moved in Atlanta, just waiting on me.
Chapman's answer makes it personal by mentioning his family's names without qualifiers. But all Packard meant was what are soldiers supposed to do when they're not at war? Then, throughout the movie, we allow every decision Packard makes to hinge on that one conversation, believing it's at least mostly about Chapman, to the point that you can even start to believe he must be alive. But now his motives are revealed. He wants to stay at war. He needs an enemy, and he needs weapons to fight it. It really never had anything to do with Chapman. He even tells Chapman to stay where he is because the Sea Stallion has enough munitions to kill Kong. To be fair, he mentions the weapons in addition to Chapman a couple times.
There's enough munitions on that down Sea Stallion to finish the job.
Unnerving radio sounds and a Dutch tilt on Packard to definitely let us know he's losing his marbles. Man, it's a thing in the Monsterverse to have eyes glowing in the fog. Yep. Even Cole knows that's messed up.
You guys are not scientists.
And you're not a soldier. He must have skull crawled up on them.
You know it's the wrong thing to do, son.
Slivko's like the only character to get an arc, but he's got one. He starts out the only one terrified, and then he has to be told multiple times to put his gun down. Now he's making a choice.
Die, you motherfucker.
Crush censoring. Jolly zoom for the boat not waiting for him. That's infuriating. Useless self-sacrifice, but hey, he tried. Not gonna work this time. Yes, thank you, Kong. Thank you for trying something different, something that, as Jordan likes to often say, we haven't seen before. Maybe the tree won't end the fight, but I can't imagine that anyone would question why Kong would waste his time with the tree since it knocks the Skull Sneaker back. Okay, that was a pretty sick move. Humans to the rescue, breaking his chains to save the humans this time. Oof, that's some anti-stormtrooper aim. Right in the eye. Brutal. Yep. He might be a thoughtful, gentle giant, but he's still got a little Lenny in him. Holy crap, that's brutal. I mean, she's dead, but rule of cool applies. Brutal.
This way to Key West?
Let's throw a cliche dodge on there for Mills being the first to say,
Be sure to tell her when I see her in the next 48 hours.
and then,
One day away.
and also be black in an ensemble cast where lots of people die, which is not only usually a death sentence, but historically a first death sentence, especially given that he was really close at the beginning of Act 2. Hey, and Kong's alive. It applies, because he's usually dead by now. Another connection between Kong and the humans in this movie. Eyes, hands, overall hatred for getting eaten, hugging, and some tear duct twisting emotion. Who knew Marlowe would end up being the main character after all? And he finally got that beer and hot dog. And he only had to wait another 43 years to see the Cubs win. More cave painting credits depicting some of our Titans. Way to spoil your stinger. I know, I've already done it, so I can't be too excited, but come on. We all thought, no way they're gonna use all of them in the next movie, right? Fun setup. Even some dead human shadowing under Ghidorah. Jordan Vogt-Roberts could probably make fun of my dog and I'd still be a fan because he's currently our best shot at a quality Metal Gear Solid movie. I mean, the man put a subtle homage to MGS1's opening with these narrow walkways and boxes stacked up. Also, he gets points for his beautiful beard, clearly. The number of references in general that are in this movie is pretty astounding. From the Apocalypse Now nods here and there to the more tonal references like fights that would be right at home in anime. I mentioned the influences on the Brainstalkers, but there are even more references to Miyazaki, with the water buffalo being similar to the forest spirit in Princess Mononoke, as well as Gunpei's sword has the two symbols from that knife. He likes all the things I like, so it's hard not to love him. And if I don't get a bunch of comments saying I'm sucking up to Jordan in this video, I'll be a little disappointed. To be fair, I did the same thing for David F. Sandberg recently, Edgar Wright, M. Night Shyamalan, Sam Raimi. But look, the point is that I love watching films made by people who have a passion for what they make. You know, the type of person that would be willing to publicly defend it from bad faith nitpicking. Breaking down why something is bad faith isn't a sign of thin skin, it's a sign of adoration and devotion to creation. But look, if I were going to question the decisions in this movie, it would be about these three super weird edits. I'm sure it was just a line from a different cut they wanted there, but the background is different, eyeline is completely lost, who is he even talking to? That's not my edit. And then these are interesting choices if they were deliberate, but my actual best guess is that they were very late stage cuts. Stuff happens, we adapt. Also, a giant ape hits a giant lizard with a tree. But Jordan wasn't the only one deserving of praise. You gotta give it up for John Goodman as well. When Walter Sobchak can also hit subtle deadpan humor like this.
Like the Bermuda Triangle, or like that aluminum foil hat that I like to wear.
It's more like the triangle than the hat, but we like to think it's much more than that.
But there's actually quite a bit of humor in this movie.
It's more of a Cold War.
Cold War, like they take the summers off?
Including some dark. Toby Kebbell was fantastic on screen and behind Kong's face. I sang John C. Reilly's praises already, but it's such an important reminder to not judge a book by its cover or a movie by its trailer. Most people rolled their eyes when they saw him, assuming that he'd be relegated to comic relief. They were half right, he is the source of a lot of comedy. But his puppy dog eyes and gruff but soft face are the heart of this film. They barely meet, but he's Packard's antithesis. He became brothers with a man who was his sworn enemy during their war. The thoughtfulness of love juxtaposed with Packard's thoughtlessness in war. Vietnam is interestingly just a backdrop to tell an original story about soldiers and how all-consuming war can be. And this isn't me passing judgment on war, or even Packard as a colonel, but Packard is no longer following orders. He's not fighting for a cause. He's using his fallen brothers as an excuse to chase a prize for his own personal glory or satisfaction. Vengeance is part of it and would be a bad enough reason, but it's only secondary to his desire to keep fighting. It's actually something that comes up a few times. Randa essentially accuses Conrad of the same thing when they first meet.
Then go to war in search of something, Mr. Conrad. If you'd found it, you'd be home by now.
And then Conrad somewhat comes to terms with it in a way after verbalizing the mythic hero that his war hero father was.
I suppose no man comes home from war.
Probably in comparison to a man that actually never came home from war and yet still managed to leave it behind. I sort of thought I would get a lot of "you're just making excuses for King of the Monsters" in that video because I said the story wasn't the most important thing, but a lot of you agreed. I have similar feelings about this film. Not that there wasn't a story, because there was one, and the unraveling of Packard becoming the real villain in a movie that contains a 100-foot kaiju monkey is more than you can ask for. The easiest legitimate complaint is that there were very few character arcs. Weaver, Conrad, and Brooks land in pretty much the same place they launched. Marlowe does most of his character growth off-screen, but still has the most compelling story. But I'll say again that the visual language in this movie is what makes it work and keeps it entertaining. The 70s callbacks with constant red and orange color grading. Jordan puts Kong in front of the moon or sun or fire whenever he can. Even subtle attention to detail, like the rotten tree collapsing under the weight of the head flailer XL. Beyond all that, it's the kind of movie I know I wanted as a kid. Monsters kicking the snot out of each other is exactly what you want from a movie with Kong in the title. Kong is back to, or maybe for the first time, elevated to mythical status. Other incarnations have given us the softer side of Kong with the human love story / captive thing, but this time he's like a Ronin, the last of his kind, just wandering his world. Kong gets purposeful development without speaking a single word. Glances of acknowledgement to Weaver and Conrad holding hands, a judgment of his reflection in the water ripples, or contemplating the southern lights. I actually think it's interesting that Jordan has undoubtedly shaped the direction of the Monsterverse with this take on Kong. Audiences aren't going to want to see him lose his, for lack of a better word, humanity. There's a logical progression I think we're all expecting in Godzilla vs. Kong that I hope they don't deviate from just for shock value. Looking forward to it even more now. And if I'm being honest, if If I'm being honest,
I think the worst part of being trapped on an island with locals that don't talk would be the loneliness. If only Marlo had had access to today's sponsor, Audible. He could have had his pick of audiobooks, including a bunch involving King Kong. And Audible members get more than ever before, including 1 free audiobook every month, regardless of price, and 2 free Audible originals, which include documentaries and scripted shows exclusive for audio. You can also exchange any book you don't love at any time. And if you sign up at our link, audible.com/CinemaWins, which is at the top of the description, or text CinemaWins to 500-500, you can get 30 days free. And we all like free stuff. We've been listening to The Handmaid's Tale since Margaret Atwood decided to write a sequel, which you can also listen to now on Audible. If you love the show, the audiobook is a must listen, especially given that it's narrated by Claire Danes and features a full cast of voice actors. Really, really excited to get into the sequel as well. So if you want to listen along with us, go to audible.com/CinemaWins or text CinemaWins to 500-500 for a free 30-day trial with 1 audiobook and 2 free Audible originals. And start listening today. So thank you, Audible, for sponsoring this episode, and thank you all for signing up. It's a great help to Lee's channel because, yes, you guessed it, this is not Lee speaking right now. Lee's not feeling so great and his voice doesn't sound the best. So he jokingly asked me if I would record this for him, and much to his surprise, I said absolutely. So here we are. My question to all of you fans out there is, who is this talking right now? Leave who you think in the comments, and honestly, I will be very disappointed if you don't get it right on the first try.
What you writing there, chap? Writing to my boy? Dear Billy, dear Billy. Dear Billy. Dear Billy. Dear Billy. Dear Billy. Dear Billy. Is that a monkey?